and it's at 6:30, and we're ready to, we do have a quorum. So if we please rise, and Rob is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Stand, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And David Fincher will lead us in prayer.
All bow, please. Lord, thank you tonight that we have come together, all meeting together in a live meeting, getting past this part of this great setback in our community and our country. Lord, just help us as we go forward, making decisions for our children and our families and our community, that everything will go well and we can get back on track. Watch over us as we take care of our construction and try to meet the needs of all of our kids. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll read the mission. The mission of Gatesville ISD, a portal to limitless possibilities, is to empower our students to be life-ready knowledge seekers and problem solvers by instilling leadership, innovation, integrity, critical thinking, and service through challenging and engaging learning experiences facilitated by passionate teachers and supported by caring parents and community members. And I need to read this about public comments. The board encourages comments about the district from members of the public. Anyone who has signed up to speak in advance of the meeting in accordance with the board procedures may do so at this time. The board asks that each participant's comments pertain to district business and be no longer than 5 minutes. For any member of the public who is accompanied by a translator, your time will be doubled as required by law. Remember that the board may not discuss or act upon any issues that are not posted on our agenda. In addition, the board has adopted policies to provide prompt and equitable resolution of complaints and concerns for employees, students, or their parents, and the general public. Copies of our district policies and procedures on public comment and filing complaints are available at the Gatesville Independent School District Administration Office, 311 South Lovers Lane, Gatesville, Texas. And Dr. Pollard, do you have something to say?
We added a comment that it's a hybrid of what we've been doing, but I wrote, while the school board meeting is being held at our normal physical location, we realize that there may be those who are hesitant to attend in person due to the COVID pandemic. In addition, due to social distancing guidelines, seating for visitors is very limited. Therefore, comments may still be emailed to bpollard@gatesvillisd.org. And I'll then read the comments aloud to the board during the meeting. And of course, folks can still watch it being live streamed, so we can kind of have two-way communication. But that was really in case we had a lot of folks coming and not enough seating, but I think we did pretty well tonight.
So, Marcy, do we have anyone signed up for public comments?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Did you check your emails just in case?
I've checked my emails and nothing so far.
Okay. So we'll go on to the consent agenda. Are there any questions or any questions about consent?
I have one.
Rob?
On page 11 on the checks, the very last entry, there's 2 entries that look like the same. New line, True Touch, flat panel is all it says. Do you know what those are? I mean, it looks like television or
They
something.
are. Flat panels are TVs, they call them
$46,000.
panels now. That's
Actually,
for,
$51,000 altogether, and it's 2 separate transactions.
that was the big one for one of the, was it for the high school, Daryl?
What page are you on?
We don't have page numbers. It's
Oh, you
page
don't?
11 of your check payments.
Page 11, the very last entry.
Flat panels.
Primary, it's
That was
primary.
primary, wasn't
The projectors.
Yeah, that went to
at
primary.
the primary school were out of date, and they were on the replacement cycle.
So every classroom at the primary got a new,
Every single classroom got a new, instead of a projector, it's a panel, like a big computer, TV, and 2 whiteboards on each side.
so as those things wear out, we've decided to go with the TVs. They tested them this spring and they're extremely durable. I think the demo that.
Yeah, those other ones there may have been some other separate purchases, may have been for like some of the high school classrooms as the renovation happens.
And that second was for high school.
My only other question on it was, is there a specific reason why it's done in two different transactions? Was it to keep it below the $50,000 range where you didn't have to come to the board, or what
No,
was the
sir, I don't
purpose
think so.
behind
I
that?
think the original one, the primary was already on, and I think they had decided later on that we were gonna order some for the high school at a later time. So I think the primary was probably around
700.
47,
Oh, you mean the 46,000?
46.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that, 46 was all the primary. That was one project.
Now, when it comes time to do the high school, that one will come before them, because obviously that should be more than 50,000. That would probably be during, closer towards the end of the renovation.
I would imagine it'll probably be sometime around next April or May.
So expect us to come to you for a big one on, so when you hear flat panel, that's TV. And so getting rid of the,
Lots of money for television,
Yeah.
$52,000 nearly.
yeah.
Yeah, they're about 1,900, 2,000 a piece.
Shane, how long do they last? You know?
They last, I think they last longer than the projectors. Because they don't have a bulb, there's no bulb, like right now, a bulb goes that way to replace the bulbs.
And I think those bulbs are pretty expensive too.
Because those TVs are directly networked, I mean, they're networked, I mean, they're a computer.
Thank you, Shane. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Rob, second. Linda, any more questions? All those in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries. Okay. Moving to information items, Mr. Frazier.
Okay. So normally, the quarterly investment report that we present to the school board is included in the consent agenda. And I asked that it be pulled out so I can give it to you in person this time. Kind of emphasize what's going on with our investments. It's pretty detailed on what we're presenting to you. At the very top, if you have those sheets, you have this sheet here you're looking at.
Oh, okay.
That's the quarterly investment report. That's not in their packets?
Yes,
You did?
Yeah.
it's the
Okay.
first information item there.
All right.
You have to give us a little bit to find it.
They gotta get used to their new program.
Okay. Well, you got it up there on the screen anyway now, so that already helps. So let's go look at it on the screen. So the first thing we have are public investment pools. Tech school, in the general fund, we have about 700,000 in that, and we placed the proceeds of the Series 2020 tax exempt bonds into the tech school fund as well. That's going to be used down probably pretty quickly. We've been taking out about $1 million, close to $1 million a month. So you'll see that going down. We provide you the weighted average days of maturity for each of our investments. And the tech school is sitting at 32 days. And the average for the last quarter is 05757, which is pretty good compared to what they are now. That's twice. So even since then, they've gone down about a half. They've really taken a run for the zero. Fed rates almost zero. And so the interest rates are just hit bottom. And that's what you're going to see probably the rest of the year. And our investment income, which exceeded 400,000 last year, I'm budgeting 100,000 for this coming year. So that took a good 300,000 chunk out of what we normally were able to budget for interest income. So in this column, we have the actual interest that was received for each of these investments. And then we give you the book value and the market value for the beginning of the quarter, and the book value and the market value for the end of the quarter, which is May 31 for this quarter. We have some CDs. We just have one left, That's a 245,000. It's 181 days, so it's 6 months away from maturing, and it's yielding 2%. The money markets, we have 3 money markets that we maintain with our bank. One's called the operating money market. That's the biggest one. That's the one that all the funds from the state go into. And you see that the balance here, about 15 million as of the end of May. And the average yield is 1.25 for the quarter. But that's also going down. So beware. As far as all the investments put together, they are 14.25 days of maturity, and the average yield was a little over 1% for the entire portfolio for this quarter. Compared it to last year, so the same time period for a year ago was 2.5. So you can see that in the last 12 months, those rates have really come down. You can see here what the money rates that provide you some benchmarking. We look at the Wall Street Journal Prime in our contract with the bank in terms of the interest that we receive on the money markets accounts. All these 3 money market accounts are with our bank. It used to be First State Bank, Texas State Bank, and now it's Bancorp South. They merged into Bancorp South out of Tupelo, Mississippi, but they have a pretty good footprint here in the state of Texas as well. Today, we received a favorable opinion from Bancorp South. They are willing to extend to us favorable rates on all 3 these money market accounts through the end of December. So we've been in negotiations with the bank, and fortunately, they made a good move for the school district. And it's actually, normally, the contract reads 3 points below prime. Prime is now 3.25. So 3 points below that, our contract says a quarter. That's all they have to really pay us to stay true to the contract. But they're going to be paying us 50 basis points above that rate through the end of December. So I'm excited about it, and I want to thank Bancorp for coming through for the district and doing the right thing for us. You can see here the 3-month average, we're really getting pretty low. 2-year note, 3-year note, 5-year note, not even 0.5%. And then here I have the breakdown of the portfolio itself. Most of the funds, 62%, are in the money market accounts of the bank. And since we placed the proceeds of the bond into a tech school, right now, for the time being, it's showing tech school has grown as far as a percentage of their overall portfolio. And then I'll provide you like a historical little chart on what interest has done. It started around here about November of 15, and it's been steadily going up until last year. And then right now, this is where we are. So we're going to be skidding pretty good right there into the next quarter. Do you have any questions about the quarterly investment report? Okay. Good.
Tighten up the belt.
All right. So that's that.
If these kids come to school.
You want to go on to the budget update?
I will.
Okay.
Yeah, the state's gonna dump a lot more stuff.
You know, this is almost like a budget workshop. Because usually, I don't get this far until the budget workshop. So this goes to show you a couple things. One, what COVID did to our operation. We're able to spend a lot more time on the budget, much quicker than we usually do, with the school being shut down and then the activity going down. So we've gathered all the budget pieces and put them together, and we're going to present them to you right now. This is what I'm calling the first look of 2021 budget. Some caveats there on that agenda form. Maintenance operation tax rate is going to remain the same, perhaps a 1 cent compression again that they're going to do this year. We'll find out what the exact rate is in about a month. They'll release that from TEA. You know, of course, the interest in sinking is going to go up 9 cents for the bond election. The certified property values, right now we just have the preliminaries. So the certified values will be issued to us in late July. Preliminaries were up about 4% in terms of values. The investment income is going to decline $300,000 due to lower rates and lower amounts of savings as we begin to spend our fund balance, a good bit of our fund balance in the high school renovation. The SHARS medical reimbursement is also going to go down. I'm saying maybe $400,000 as a hit from COVID, because we haven't been doing any of that servicing for the last several months. Therefore, we will not be getting any reimbursements for the past several months. And it'll probably hit us good next school year in terms of what we expect out of the Medicaid reimbursement. I'm budgeting $500,000 for that for next year. You know, remember this year we had budgeted $850,000, which is kind of a mistake anyway, by about $150,000. And we're still awaiting news on the appeal, roughly $170-some thousand for transportation for reimbursement on the SHARS program. Right now, our attorney and their attorney are wanting possibly to settle this thing out of court, which is fine with me. And so as long as they do the right thing and make good on what they should have been doing, I'll be more than happy not have to go to Austin and get this thing settled. So that could happen any day. And the money would come to us, if they rule in our favor, probably 2 months after the action is finished. Probably take them that long to cut the check. They're kind of slow. High school reno, at this point, could be $500,000 over budget. There are some contingencies, owner contingency, contractor contingency that's in there, but just to be on the safe side, I'm saying we could be looking at a $500,000 overall loss by the time the whole project is finished. And you're not surprised by that. That's just the way these projects go. I warned you about it. It happened with the elementary. We've already, we're not into this thing just a few months. We already were getting hit right and left, with extra expenses that we did not anticipate. Largest of which probably is the asbestos removal. After they found a bunch of asbestos in parts of the old building and even in the slab that they took up. State funding is going to decrease by about $500,000, which will be made up in local taxes. So they're reducing their part and anticipating that we'll make that up through local taxes. One of the most important factors I'm saying here that will dictate our budget has to do obviously with enrollment and attendance. We have no idea what that's going to look like next year. Nobody does. We still don't quite have a grasp on what school opening is going to look like, nationwide or statewide or here in Gatesville for that matter. So we're hoping that, this budget's based on current enrollment and at least 95% attendance. And if we don't get that, that may have some waivers coming from the state for, because I'm sure it's going to impact attendance next year, and we won't be alone. All other districts in the state will be facing the same problem. But that's just, I'm just saying that could very much impact the revenue side. Yes, ma'am?
Have they told y'all any timeline when you might hear from the state on the state funding? You have no idea?
No
That's
idea
what
at all.
I'm thinking.
Everybody's
Makes it
waiting for
hard to
somebody
do
else
your
to do something.
budget.
Everybody's waiting for the governor to make a decision on the stuff, and then it just kind of filters down. But
I'm sure this caught them just as big a surprise as it did us. They're not prepared to do something like that. The COVID deal, that is strange waters. Nobody knows how to navigate it. What they can
I think the state has the funds in the emergency fund to continue the funding of schools for another year, based on what they did last year through the biannual legislative session. When they had the big increases in teacher salaries, we kind of went a little conservative on that last year, and of course now it's a good thing we did, because basically we're going to keep everything frozen. we're not gonna propose any kind of a increase in the scales themselves. Now, the people on the scales will receive a 1-year step increase. So, but as far as the scale itself, everything's just kind of frozen in place. And until we see what's gonna happen. We just need to see like a year from now, what things are looking like. All right, so the next thing I was gonna show you was the, this right here, proposed first look. Is that Barrett right there? So $30,244,000 is what we anticipate as our revenues for next school year. Let's scroll down to the revenue sheet, please. And we got one sheet here, it's district revenues. So of course, most of it's in the general fund right here. And these would be, you know, what are the gates gonna look like? I don't know, you know, they're talking about half the attendance at games. So obviously that's gonna hit the gates. So whether we're able to get even close to these, we don't know, but it's a small amount of our overall budget. So the three biggies here are the general fund and the food service fund. The food service fund, we have it going up $400,000. That's really attributable to the evening meal program that took off like gangbusters, and it has a value of about $400,000 a year. So that's the increase in the food service fund is due to that. Interest in sinking is going up, what, $900,000 in terms of taxes because of the bond issuance. So if you scroll down to the next sheet, I have the general fund split out for you. There we go. So that $26,227,000 is detailed here. Can you get to the bottom without cutting something off the top? No, you can't. Okay. So here's the number we're looking at for the general fund. So let's quickly look at maybe the big items in terms of income changes. All right, so here's the current levy. Levy's going up $400,000. Let's see, this stayed the same. This right here has to do with the payment from other school districts for one of our SPED teachers that we allocate and bill to other school districts. That's what that $50,000 income is right here. Tuition fees, it's not very much. Here's your interest, so we got $444 in interest income last year. And then we budgeted $350 this year, and I'm knocking it down all the way to $100 right here. So that took a pretty good chunk out of the revenue side. Next big item, this is just the allocation of transportation charges across all the departments. And what's the next big item? 10,000 is just a conglomeration of little things. This one's a biggie. These are the two numbers here for the state aid. We'll be getting $14,349 roughly, which is close to that. But here we get $400,000 more in what they call the per capita apportionment. So they calculate it and then they divide it between those two lines. So that's an increase. And that's to compensate for the increase in taxes. So you see where it comes in and goes out? Yeah, it comes in up in taxes and it goes out on the state. The TRS on behalf payments, this is really like a bookkeeping entry. We record that as an expense. On the expense side, we have to show it as a revenue, that it's not our money, it's the state providing that benefit right here, the TRS. Your Medicaid, here's where we started with an $850,000 budget this year, and I'm projecting $500,000 for next year. And probably next year we'll have that, hopefully that settlement that we have under appeal, that'll come in. I doubt it's going to come in before end of August. Impact aid is pretty steady, around 125. And the sale of surplus goods, about 7,500. And that's the revenue side. Any questions on the revenue side that I can help you with? Okay. All right, now then the appropriations are 30,164,464. And here's the breakout of that. So this comes from all of our spreadsheets that we send out to each department and all the campuses, and they prepare these. And then these are all entered into the Texas management software system, and then, you know, we spit out these Texas reports to you every month to the board. So the big item here is HR. HR has grown a little over 700,000. The step increases probably are attributable for about 300,000 of that. And then we have several what we call extra positions that we have padded it with. We were going over that at our admin meeting today after lunch. We trimmed off some, but we kept some more. That number also includes the $500 extra payment that we provide, the board provides for the staff on the November paychecks for year-end supplement. Other than that, I don't think there was anything really too abnormal there. Did you see anything that you wanted to comment, Barry, from what our discussion was today?
When we're talking about the extra positions, that's for like if we had an influx of, so we've got 10 teachers in 3rd grade and all of a sudden you need an 11th one because there was too many kids. And so some of those we pad every year with probably 4 to 5 positions. And so because attendance is so iffy, we went ahead and started peeling a lot of those back. And so
And we did add pre-K this year, the full
Yes.
day pre-K.
To get prepared for the full day pre-K.
Yeah.
Yes, we
Yeah.
added
That's
one
pre-K.
position and we've got one in there just in case we go get more kids. The same with a PPCD position that's in there. We think if things were run like they normally were, we would have enough 3-year-olds coming in by December to add a position. So that's in there as well as our aides that would go with that teacher. So those are the main things that we added.
so we kept the ones that we thought were likely to be needed, and the ones that we thought, we went ahead and nixed those.
So I mentioned 2 things that enabled us to be able to get this budget together this quickly. And the HR department is the other piece of the puzzle. But they fully implemented the PMIS software application that we started to implement a year ago. And Ms. Worthington in particular has worked very hard on getting all these numbers together. And without that, because these numbers here normally wouldn't come to me from payroll until either late July or early August. But here, you know, we're already at June 15th, and HR has all the HR numbers for us. So that is pretty incredible. But, you know, she deserves a lot of praise and thanks for getting that out. And it's a lot
Marcia
of work,
decided
but
she
it's
would-
very exciting.
Marcia's going out with a bang.
She's going out with a bang. All right, so you see the different campuses. They all stayed pretty close, maybe a little bit more. And one thing about this is the budget that they have presented to us. Now at the campus levels, we basically asked them to freeze, close to freeze, but they needed a few extra things. So these have not been redacted. These are raw numbers, like what we would normally get before you see them.
These are the wish lists. So we've not tinkered with any of this. This is, you're seeing this kind of like when we're seeing it.
So that's why I call it a first look.
Yeah.
All right. So for instance, let's see here, fine arts, athletics, going up 50,000. They got a few little things on their wish list. Probably half that's football and the other half's cross country. The food service is going up, but that's the cost part of the evening meal. So you saw the revenue increase on the revenue side, and now here's the expense increase for the evening meals. And that enabled us, hopefully, we meet this target, to eliminate the cafeteria subsidy. and from now on, hopefully stay in the black. You not have to rely on any subsidy from the general fund to operate our food service. So you'll see that that 100,000 was removed for next year. Technology, 20,000 increase. I think that probably is mostly attributable to all of the admin, campus administrators and admin, personal computers or laptops like this are coming due for a refresh, and that's what that is for right there, that 20. Maintenance, he's got his list of projects. They're always good. We haven't seen anything we like unless we have to really trim them. But at this point, you know, I still have the green light to proceed as is. Now, we did knock off about 200,000 here in capital outlays from last year. And that's on this line right here, line 17. If you recall, is that right? Yeah, right here. There's 200,000 we had budgeted last year. We're taking it out completely and just putting these projects up into the maintenance budget. And that's how he can take care of his projects right here. And we are not buying any new copiers, so that was a big item of expense, about 100,000 last year. So that went away, so that's saving almost 200,000 right here. The interest and sinking fund, now we got to start making payments on the bond, and so we will have about a $600,000-700,000 increase in our budget for that. District admin actually went down. Did y'all notice district admin went down? Usually I get a hoorah on that one. Because if it goes up.
Well, we know this is the final one.
Hmm? It's not the final.
You'll come up with it. You'll probably come up in the end.
You think so?
Well, no.
Shane will ask.
Shane don't know.
Yeah.
Jennings spoke tonight.
All right, here's district security. You know, now we have 5 SROs, one at each campus. We had budgeted last year at the full 5. They didn't all come on board, you know, at the first of the year. Kind of came on board at different parts of the year. But next year, that 255 is going to be needed. It's going up a little bit to 259. Most of that's the SROs.
So
testing.
we are going to keep them, right?
Correct.
I was asked that question.
Most definitely.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Pandemic or not, school shootings.
They're still under warranty.
I know.
That's right.
We're not going to defund SROs.
Well, I really was asked that question.
Yeah, other school districts have been under some scrutiny in some of the larger cities to defund them, but they've done a fantastic job. And I don't think the public realizes sometimes how good the relationship is between the SROs and the kids. And that is so crucial because if you're growing up with them from the little bitty child at primary all the way up through high school where you're always having good positive interactions with policemen, that's fantastic. You know, for one thing, you're not fearful of them, but at the same time, you know how to interact with them. You know, it was so important that the state of Texas said that every senior that graduates has to have a mandatory training on how to interact with a peace officer. Because so many people get killed because they don't know how to interact with them. And so we typically, this was going to be the first year, I believe, and I'll have to ask Shane, but I think typically we were going to have an SRO teach it. But some other teachers can teach it as well. But, no, the SROs they had a fantastic first year.
How did I skip over transportation? There's transportation. 2 buses are in there, right here. So we did 2 buses this year, and we got the budget in there for 2 more buses next year. That's always something that you're tempted to cut out if your budget gets tight. But anyway, we kept everything in there.
Good.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, we didn't put them in, or didn't keep them, did we? They got dropped, and we wound up with some more out buses.
I thought those buses were like 100,000 each.
They're about 100,000 each,
You got 604.
right here.
So
That's the
maintenance.
total transportation budget.
Oh.
That's your fuel, tires, batteries, everything.
Maintenance, everything.
Maintenance, talked about maintenance, district security. curriculum and instruction. This is the department that is led by none other than Shane Webb. The one and only.
Money man.
And we used to have some state allotment stuff in here. Maybe ESL, maybe GT, and career and tech, where we would put some mandatory spending here. And now he's so organized that he's got it all in his budget, in the curriculum and instruction budget, including several new PIC codes that came aboard this past year as a result of last year's state legislative mandates. 36, 37, 38, dealing with early education, dyslexia, and the military and career readiness. So he's got a lot in this curriculum and instruction budget, and it's only overall going up about 9,000. Kudos. SPED, down here next to the last, but not least, going up 9,500. Software, Pam? I think that might be some software she's getting. It's not very much in this case. And then tax levy, oh, they're doing more testing.
Software, yeah.
They are doing more testing.
It was for the goal book, the curriculum goal book. It's for the teachers, special education teachers. They use it to write the present levels of performance on the students, and it also helps them with goals. But it also gives them the needed resources to test those goals and have instant access for their students.
So do you have what you need with this? Good, because Alfred had a great program. And then finally, tax levy. This is the Mr. Tax Collector and Mr. Tax Appraiser. And Mr. Tax Appraiser gets more than the Tax Collector, believe me. We just went up 5,000 as in case it goes up. So I think his actual quote was just a little bit under 5, probably around 4,000 increase. So that brings us down to the total budget of $30,164,000. And back to this sheet, that puts us at an $80,000 surplus. And that's made up of two things. It's made up of a surplus in the INS account of $146,000. Have to scroll down a little bit right here. So this 80 is a result of the general fund being a little bit in the hole, and INS actually coming out ahead a little bit. So they both net out to this number. And of course, if you have any excess in the INS, you can always use it, you know, to pay down debt at any time the board should choose. So that's basically it in a nutshell for 2021.
Any questions
I'm pretty happy
for
with it.
Mr. Frazier? Thank you.
Yeah, have your questions, you know, be thinking about them, and we'll still have that budget
For
workshop.
August.
We'll go to midnight if we need to. All right, thank y'all.
Okay. Okay. Moving on, Marcia?
One of the new requirements of the ESSER grant, which used to be the No Child Left Behind grant, and now it's called ESSER, is that we have to talk publicly about the application and how we are using that money. And also, it is a requirement of the ESSER funds, which are the elementary, secondary, school emergency relief funds. So those are two things that we have to do in public. We had a Zoom meeting of the district, and we had 26 people present, a lot of more parents than we normally do, on May 26th, May 28th, and we talked about these grants, how we spend them, and what we thought we would spend the ESSER funds on. We knew at that time we are eligible to receive $431,000 from the stimulus package from the federal government, the ESSER funds, but at the time we didn't have an application and we didn't know what they could be spent on. This is the largest pot of money from the CARES Act, and it has more access to the LEAs. There are 3 other stimulus funds, but one's for statewide projects, one's managed by the Emergency Management Department, and it's a small amount, but this is the largest fund. So you have to go in a public meeting and say, we are going to apply for these funds. Now, I had about 6 hours of training last Thursday and Friday about these funds, and as with any other federal funds, they're all tied to compliance and paperwork and a lot of documentation that's not really fun to do. But TEA, the federal government sent these to the states. TEA said as a part of, due to the COVID virus, that they would maintain a hold harmless for the first 2/3 of the year of school, but they will not maintain that if you do not apply for these funds, because these funds, when you apply for these funds, if you don't apply for them, your foundation school program will be, like ours would be, $431 less. So we're gonna have to use these funds to pay for something. We hope to pay for salaries, and we can go back to March 13th and hopefully pay some salaries. So with the ESSER funds and the foundation school money that we typically get, that would add up to what a routine year would be. So even though we felt like at first that these were going to be extra funds, they're really extra support to help us pay for what we've always had. But, and that grew quite a response from people, but it's just all part of what this pandemic has caused. But we typically wind up with, you have the ESSA grant, we have Title I Part A, which we fund reading intervention teachers and some instructional coaches out of. We did have approximately $50,000 left over from this year's Title I Part A budget due to the fact that we had to move an IC into ESL. That's way more than you routinely would roll forward, but due to COVID, they took off the limit, so we still have that. So that money, along with the $493, allowed us to continue to fund those people that we normally fund at this time, which is reading intervention teachers, instructional coaches. Elementary added a reading intervention teacher back because they had lost one last year right at the beginning of school, and so that will help. With Title II Part A, we fund one instructional coach salary with that money. Now when you look at that $72,000, you think, oh my goodness, an instructional coach makes a lot of money, but that is their salary plus all of their benefits. So it's insurance and everything they cost us makes up that salary. It may be about benefits cost about 30% more. So all of that is figured in, it looks inflated. And then this year we're gonna use the Title IV money, a portion of it, to fund a math intervention teacher at elementary, and hopefully use a portion of the Title I Part A school improvement funds. But we have to let you know and let the public know that we intend to apply, and hopefully we will get that information, the application done before the end of June. We've got an ad going in the paper to notify private schools within our boundaries that they can apply through us, and we could share some of the funds if they so choose, but they also have to go by these guidelines. And that's the way it's always been. We typically have no one apply with us, but we did get that. I did get that in last Friday, so we are ready to apply when the time comes that we, June 30th, and this money will be available for 2 years. But Mr. Frazier and I are working together, and hopefully we can use pre-award salaries and spend all of that on that and help support our state funds so that we don't have any less than what we had last year. Do any of y'all have any questions about that?
Could you go over the hold harmless part again?
The way they, and Barrett, you may can help me on this. The state said, you know, when we were out of school, that they were gonna support us and we were gonna continue to get that money. And at the current rate. Then the stimulus funds came through, and now they're saying the hold harmless, they were guaranteeing just through the portion of the school year prior to March.
Yeah.
And they want us now to use these funds to prop us up for the remainder of the year. So, and that's what some people didn't really appreciate in the webinar, that it's just kind of the facts of how it happens.
So as one flow of money goes up, the other does that, so it evens out.
Thanks.
So now we have presented in public meetings, so I've fulfilled one more requirement. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any questions, anybody? Okay, now, Barrett, on campus daily start and end times?
Yes, our start and end times are about the same, and Marcy, for some reason, I don't know why this is not letting me scroll down here, but start and end times when we begin in the morning and when we end in the afternoons are the same at every campus except primary. So remember we said we're adding the full day pre-K because of House Bill 3, they said we really need to have a full day pre-K. So the thing we're facing with that is that we're trying to make sure that it is staggered enough to where the kindergarten kids and the pre-K kids, there's not so much congestion at arrival or dismissal that there's a big, problem. And so this summer, Ms. Streeter, Marty, Scott, and I, we went out and looked and said, well, should we dismiss all those full-day pre-K kids under that porch with the buses? Should we let them continue to do that little circle in front of the primary library, or should we just have them all together in the big circle? And as we thought it over and looked at the pros and cons, one, if we do something like 2 or 3 staggered lines in front of the primary under the awning with the buses, we feel like that's a safety concern. That a kid could dart out between a bus to try to get to a car, so we said that's not safe. Using the current little primary parking circle, that's so small that we feel like that's going to cause congestion, and so we decided that it's best just to go ahead and have them all go through the big circle, but pre-K is going to start, the first bell rings at 7:35. Now the next bell won't start till probably about 7:45. They'll get out at 3:05, and then kindergarten starts later and gets out at 3:25. So we're hoping that 20-minute of staggered time will help, with congestion. And so those are that's what we have on tap. This wasn't an action item, but do y'all have any suggestions? That's all right. That's okay. Okay, good. Thank you. So do y'all have any questions about that? So the only one that's changing a little bit is the primary, with a little bit earlier start for the youngest ones.
So we're starting school.
We're going to go over all that here in a minute with CDC guidelines.
Yeah.
Any questions on that?
Isn't that awful early? 7:35?
Well, the second bell rings to 7:45. So we're giving them some time to get situated. And so the only way to maneuver the buses and also get them kind of away from the kindergarten kids was to stagger it like that.
And they'll have breakfast in the room anyway.
Yes, they'll have breakfast just like always. Okay.
Okay.
Thank y'all.
So you want to do the update?
Yes, so I wanted to give y'all
Astroturf.
a little update on the Astroturf since it's been many months since we talked about that. So the crew started last week and got the rolls of the old carpet up. And so that turf was put in 2013. Again, just to remind y'all, it's under an 8-year warranty, so we're still under the warranty. And of course, we made a decision as a district to put a pad underneath it because it doesn't have a pad. And it had reached the GMAX ratings to where it was getting too hard. And so even the referees had said that the field feels too hard. And so far that first phase of getting the turf has gone well. So I guess what I need to ask you guys, the stuff that was really messed up was put in the dumpster. That was very little. But a lot of people came and got it. which was great. And even a lot of folks asked me, I said, come get it, come get it. Now, we're gonna use almost all of the rest of the turf in different places. We're gonna redo what I call the old tennis courts where junior high and soccer play now or practice on that practice field. We're gonna redo all that. Certain areas around baseball, softball, just some smaller areas. But then if there's any left over, there's 3 things we can do. We can set it out for bid. Everybody can bid on it. You can do a interlocal with another school district, like Jonesboro. Matt reached out to me and said he's interested in it. Or third, you could trade it out for services. You could say, well, like I think somebody approached Toby about, they would be willing to reskin the baseball area, you know, after we get the new seating, that they'd also do the press box. You know how it's green right now, it has that old tin on it, that they would reskin it. And so we have 3 options there. And I guess what we'll do is survey the 3 options and pick the best one. But do y'all have any thoughts on that? Bid, interlocal with the school, or trade for services? So we're kind of in a win-win-win situation whenever I guess, after we look at the 3 options, which one's the best? Do y'all have any thoughts or opinions on it? The Astroturf people know that we've got to get it all done by mid-July because we still have that July 24th graduation on the books. And so he knows, I've reiterated to him time and time again, whatever you do, so long as it's done by mid-July, because we have to have it back up and running. And so they're gonna come in and probably skim a little bit of that sand off because they gotta make room for the pad. And that tack board around the field is like carpet that you tack it onto. About 80% of that was rotten, so they've got to replace about 80% of that. And so that wear and tear from the sun and rain, it does a lot of damage. But thankfully, it was under warranty, and we got a good price on it.
What are you gonna do with the stuff you're taking, the old stuff that's already there, like on the tennis courts, et cetera, et cetera?
That, we got the opinion from the Astroturf rep. He said, that, I don't know if that's worth keeping. You know, it probably would be in the same bin as far as what we did with the other stuff. We could either auction it off, you know, have people bid on it, or somebody wanted it, but it's really, really, really old. He looked at it and said that's probably a 2nd generation Astroturf. He said that's many, 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 many cycles ago. And I think we actually got that from Baylor. And so it was some of their old stuff that they were getting rid of. And, but that's extremely old. And in the center of that old tennis court, there is none. It's come up. It's starting big chunks of it, and so it's time. Any other thoughts on that?
Make $1, I'd say make $1.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll try to, it seems to be even stuff that's ripped is a hot commodity. People are anxious to get it.
Could we sell square feet of it?
Possibly.
For moneymaker?
Yeah, possibly.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll go on to the action items. CDC guidelines.
Okay, so this is the big one tonight. You know, a lot of people probably ask you, what are you going to do in the fall? And a lot of districts have been very kind of, and I understand why, but they don't want to fully commit to anything in particular because they're afraid of, you know, how fluid it still is. And so what I did was, we as a team here, we took our nurses, transportation, maintenance, principals, all different types of groups of folks to kind of just start a rough draft of what might school look like in the fall. And so what I did was I took the CDC guidelines. You keep hearing about, oh, the CDC guidelines, the CDC guidelines. So we took that to begin with, and I just took their document and started with it. And so I like the fact that the CDC, their very first opening paragraph said, do what's feasible for you. Tailor it to meet your community. Do what's practical. And so I'm hoping that the governor and the TEA will make sure that they don't have some sort of stipulation that makes it so difficult that we can't tailor it to our needs. For example, if TEA was to say, well, you have to have a certain amount of square footage per classroom for this many kids. Well, we can't build more classrooms. So how does that work exactly? You know, if we were to sit a child every other seat on the bus, one per seat, every other seat. Are we gonna double our fleet and buy 20 more buses? Can we afford to do that? And so there are things that if we effectively did, it would torpedo school. Luckily though, the vast majority of these recommendations from the CDC are pretty simple. They're pretty easy and we can do most of them. But some of the big things that they said, well, you may not be able to do this, we just can't do. And so the first one you may have been asking about would be, okay, the calendar. There's some options from the state. Well, you want to go year round? Do you want to have big intersessional breaks? Do you want to have your kindergarten through 5th grade kids do 25 more days than your older kids? And I always take it through the litmus test of as a parent, would you want that? And so, you know, our rough draft here is the first set for the parents to look at and give feedback. So what we're proposing is we're going to do the normal calendar. You know, the one y'all approved a few months ago, we're just going to do that one. We're going to start up in August and we're just going to forge ahead. And so that's the first kind of big thing. Now, again, the caveat is now if the governor swoops in and says, no, you're not going to do that, well, then we'll have to rebound from that. So, but that's the plan. So the CDC has all these different things here, and some of them are pretty much common sense. Stay home if you're sick. Now, the implication of that, though, is attendance. You've got to brace yourself for this. Attendance next year probably won't be good. It's just, there's no way around it. Attendance is not going to be great. I hope it is.
I don't feel good. I've been exposed.
Yeah. And, you know, it's one of those things where we don't want to do things to encourage them. You know how you used to, well, fight through it. At least come up here till 10. Yeah, you've got all the symptoms, but come on up here. We don't want to do that.
No.
We want the message to be stay home, and the same to go for the staff. So Marcia's going to look into, all right, if you do catch COVID, you know, what can we do for you to help you so you don't start getting your pay docked every day because you're out for 50 days or something. Now, hopefully that's worst case scenario. So again, stay home if you're sick. You know, the CDC has a lot of guidelines here about, you know, you're supposed to be 3 days with no fever, your symptoms need to improve. Of course, if you get a doctor's note and they say you can come back, that would be different. So again, those are some things that we'll look at as far as, you know, if a kid is showing those types of symptoms. Another simple one, wash your hands. Well, we preached this to the kids already, but we'll keep preaching it and make sure that they're doing it. Here's another big one. All right, are you going to make us wear a mask or not? Well, the answer is, well, if you want to wear a mask, fantastic. You don't want to wear a mask? Fantastic. We're not going to make you do either one. So it's up to you. Now, the other thing I'm asking, though, is don't make the teacher, parent, say, okay, I want my 5-year-old to wear that mask all day long, and it's your responsibility to make sure he wears it. Can't do that because so many children don't want to wear that mask. And so another thing the CDC said is be sure you don't force a kid who's incapacitated to wear one. A life skills type student that doesn't have the mobility to say, I better take this off, I can't breathe. Kids that are 2 years or younger, of course that doesn't really apply to us. You know, and the other thing that we said was with these athletic camps and athletic sports, you're not going to wear a mask because there's been tons of studies showing that you're much more likely to have a collapsed lung, a heat stroke, or heat exhaustion by wearing a mask out in this 110-degree heat as opposed to catching COVID. And so China just came out with a study they did where 7,500 people that they sampled, one person out of the 7,500 caught it outside. All the others caught it somehow indoors. And so the bigger threat to our kids outside in this climate is the heat. And so we didn't want them wearing a mask. But again, during the day, if they want to wear one in class, that's fine. And so we just don't want to mandate that one way or the other. And so again, if it's a teacher, maybe the teacher 80% of the day they don't wear it, but then when they get close to a kid, like guided reading, or they're going to confer with the kid, well, they may slap it on there. Any questions so far about what we've gone over? Any comments about this? So face mask, up to you. Wash your hands. Stay home if you're sick. We'll put a bunch of information out about, you know, COVID and sharing information with parents. Cleaning and disinfecting, that's another big one. Now, we've gotten some good news here recently from World Health Organization, CDC. Well, on second thought, it doesn't live on surfaces quite like we thought it did. And so that's good news. You know, it's not as viral as they once thought. And so, but still, you know, a lot of things can get very germy, even on a good year. And so we're going to ask all of our evening custodians to work during the day. So we're going to have extra manpower during the day to wipe water fountains, wipe sinks, wipe door handles, anything that we think gets really germy during the day. We're going to try to have the teachers cut down on the amount of things that the kids share. We want the bus drivers to do the same thing, to try to clean the buses frequently. And again, we're going to try to make sure that we're storing things safely. So again, just a lot of cleaning, a lot of disinfecting. And then again, the thing that I think folks worry about the most are shared items. And so every other year, when you come up to meet the teacher and you got that big sack of stuff, they've got this big bin where you put all your pencils in here, Johnny's and Susie's and all the pencils in here. All the glue goes in here, and then we're all going to cram around and get it during the day. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep it all separate. Johnny, all your supplies go in that cubby right there. We're not mixing them all together. Same way during lunchtime. The little ones throw all their lunch boxes into this great big clothes basket, and then they wag them down to the cafeteria. We're going to not do that. We're going to have them all in individual cubbies so they're not sharing as much as what they've been doing. So again, a lot of this stuff is not real earth-shattering, but I think it will help cut down on some of the germs. Again, we'll try to make sure that kids aren't sharing as much. Band instruments, luckily right now, Jose said it's 1-to-1. Nobody shares anything. And he actually said all the band instruments, the tubas, everything to get cleaned professionally. So those things are very clean right now. We toyed with the fact of just saying no drinking fountains, but we felt like that the kids need that. We just have to wash them and clean them as much as we can and beg them not to put their mouth on it. Kids can bring their water bottles, fill up their water bottles, things like that, but you know, some things you just can't control. Another big one is desks and tables. So we're going to ask them to spread out as much as they can. If there's tables, maybe all sit on one side. The main thing the CDC says, don't face each other. So we're constantly back and forth. Again, on the school buses, wherever we can, as much room as we can get, we'll try it. Classroom rugs, you know, the kids all get on the classroom rug. We'll spread them out as much as we can. But again, I don't know if it's humanly possible to get everyone 6 feet apart in a classroom. That's undoable. And so if they mandate that, it's difficult to see how we're going to be able to meet it. So they're going to have to make some sort of added guidance or something. Right now, you know, a lot of these things are suggestions, but we don't know what TEA or Governor Abbott will say. This is no longer a can you do it, but you will do it. And so this is what we're operating under right now. Big spaces like cafeterias, gyms, auditoriums, we're going to try to clean those a lot. We're trying to ask staff, don't congregate together. You know, all the bus drivers get together about 2 o'clock. If one of them gets sick and they've all been around each other, what just happened to your fleet of bus drivers? And so that's something that we've got to think about. A lot of other just little things. Library, don't send them all down to the library at once. Send 1 or 2. Restrooms, don't all go down there 4 or 5 classes to the restrooms at once. Playgrounds, try to stagger that. So in the cafeteria, we've mainly already done this, but we've got, for the most part, all disposable food service items. Plastic forks, napkins, plates, so all of it can be tossed and thrown away. So we won't be doing a buffet style anymore, a self-serve style anymore. You've got to get an individually wrapped item and you just take it. So there's no more kind of the traditional, what you think of someone spooning you something or you reaching in and spooning something. It's all individually wrapped. And so if there are any trays still in existence, of course we'd wash those with hot water in the dishwashing machines. Again, we'll remind the kids, don't share food. A lot of the teachers we talked to said, we'll even try to take them outside if the weather's good, you know, to try to do things to try to get them out of the cafeteria. Again, here's some things that may or may not be well received by the parents. Depends upon your viewpoint. Every year we typically have 3 party days. It's like Halloween, Christmas, and one in the spring. Those are usually where pandemics start. That's where one of them started last year. All the kids so hated to miss the Halloween party that we came up there sick, and then we had a really bad attendance the next week because we don't want to miss that party. And so there's also a lot of food sharing. There's lots of parents coming in from everywhere with different things, and so we're saying, this may not be very well received, but we're saying no parties for the kids with the food unless things get dramatically better. Now, a lot of these things we may say, well, if things get tremendously better, oh yeah, we'll go back to doing it. We're also asking that the parents' birthdays. All right, I'm going to bring brownies for all the kids because it's my kid's birthday. We're asking you not to do that. Just a normal day. Well, I'm going to go get Bush's chicken and bring it up to the office. And there's 30 different parents up there with Bush's chicken. We're asking you not to do that. So those are going to be some things that you may get flack on when, now why are y'all doing that? Well, because we're trying to cut down on the foot traffic and the volume of people coming up here. And it's a big mix mash of food and different things like that. So, again, we'll do the evening meal thing. Again, probably it won't be the first week, probably around the 3rd week of school. And so that kind of rounds out the food aspect. What do y'all think about that? Any comments about food? So that's going to be a little bit more, that's the first time we may step on some toes. Well, we're asking you not to do that. Of course, for folks that are more leery of COVID, they'll be like, that's great. So there's this spectrum. Some of these things people will like, other things people will not like. Depends upon your viewpoint. High-risk staff and students. You know, some of our kids truly have an autoimmune issue. They have true disorders that compromise their immune system. We're asking those parents to come to us on a one-by-one basis and talk to us about what do you want to do. You know, do you want us to have some sort of hybrid type situation for the child? We're willing to work with them. We're willing to work with parents and also staff. You know, we have some staff that are at risk. Here's another one people may ask you about. Assemblies, visitors, and field trips. And so right now, this isn't going against the grain of anything. I just read from a legal update that they're saying no field trips right now anyway. We had already agreed no field trips unless, again, things get a lot better. The unfortunate thing is the things that are getting cut are oftentimes the things the kids enjoy the most. Yeah. You know, assemblies is another thing. They said don't do assemblies right now. I'm hoping that we can still have some gatherings to certain extents, but we have to make sure that it doesn't exceed that amount that they have outlined. I'm hoping that again that these things will lighten up and be easier on us as time goes on. So we'll be limiting non-essential volunteers. You know, we ask a lot of people to come on campus, scouts and literacy people that read to the kids, and a lot of those things we're just going to have to say not right now, because a lot of times some of those partners are in the at-risk groups, and so we've got to make sure that we're keeping them safe too. Pep rallies, we like to look at maybe doing something outdoors. Now here's one good piece of news because of the outdoors thing. The bonfire right now is safe. That's one thing the kids will ask you about. Right now, I don't see why we can't have a bonfire. So again, keep it real sessions, prime time, flex time. We're going to keep doing all that. Hopefully those are smaller groups, but still we've got to make sure it doesn't exceed the maximum number. Here's another one that we're going to do away with that might cause some flack. We're thinking about not doing an open house. If you ever think about a large group of people in a very confined, hot, no air circulating space, go to an open house. And so, we're nixing convocation. We're nixing the health benefits fair. That's another thing where people just crowd in and there's all this, massive humanity. We can't do stuff like that. And so Meet the Teacher, we're going to have kind of a hybrid version for two groups. Primary, because it's their first go with school, and the life skills crews. And so those we can keep small and separated, but those big open house nights where there's this tremendous turnout, we feel like that might be asking for problems. Now getting the supplies up here. You know how we had a supply pickup day? Okay, come get your stuff. See you later. We'll see you next year. We're thinking about doing a supply drop-off. So you've got your stuff, come drop it off, we'll get it in the cubby for you. So that way the first day of school, you're not dragging in 10 bags of stuff. The other thing that we're thinking about doing is if you don't want to contend with it, we can give you the option, you can go to Walmart and buy stuff, or you could just donate a supply fee. we're still thinking about whether or not we do that too, just to kind of make it easier on the parents. So again, so those are a few more kind of, you may get some flack. People may be like, well, I don't like that. But that's the rationale we're kind of thinking right now as far as big groups of people, small spaces. That seems to be the thing they're wanting us to avoid. Any questions about that so far?
Yes. Backing up to where you were talking about students with immune systems and all, are you gonna require doctor like notes or something where you don't just have every parent come in and say, my kid's got this?
Yes, because a lot of those students, they have well-documented true illnesses. And so, yeah, we need it to be more solidified as opposed to just, well, I feel like I've got an autoimmune issue.
Or just playing it to.
Right. Right.
Well, usually the nurses already know about those students.
Yes, like we know already, unless we get some new to the district.
Well, what are you gonna do about the one that comes up and says, little Johnny's got this immune thing? Are you gonna have to prove it?
Well, I mean, if they had documentation, that'd be fantastic. Now, if push comes to shove, I don't think that they're, what TEA, the governor's saying right now, I don't know that you can force them. You know, if they're saying, I really don't feel comfortable doing this, what other options do I have? You know, at that point.
That's what you're gonna have a lot of.
Yeah. And so we'll just have to wait and see.
I think, maybe not, but maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of the nurses, Linda, the next part is they're going to be our main point of contact. So if you're feeling sick and you call up there, let us know that you've either been around somebody that's had COVID or you've got a lot of symptoms of COVID, and they can be kind of the contact person for the campus. You know, they'll be available too if they need to screen somebody, if a child does get dropped off and an hour into it, they're feeling bad, or 2 hours into it, you know, we'll have the nurses come and take their temperature and things like that. So self-reporting, again, if somebody was exposed, they've got to tell us. You know, we need to know so we can go from there. If there was an outbreak, of course, we would have to, even one person will have to notify the other kids in the classroom. We'd have to contact Cornell Health, Dr. Sheffield, other health authorities, and kind of ask them their opinion too on what to do. Where I talked a little bit about trying to see if we can't help the employees. Marcia will probably come back in a couple of months with maybe something that we could do to, if someone does get COVID, how do we help them with their, you know, leave. One thing that we decided that we're going to keep on the books are emergency drills. You know, those are things that we need to keep doing as well.
Have you thought about the temperature testing of employees?
So we can screen, it's possible to screen, like say for instance at the high school, that'd probably be 65, 70 people. You know, if you start saying, well, we're going to screen all the kids too, that's 850 plus 70. And so there's certain logistics. That's one of those things like the CDC says, if you can do it, fantastic. If you're completely outmanned and outnumbered, do the best you can. You know, and so again, it's something that we've talked to the nurses about, and they're prepared to try to do as many as they can. But I hate to lay that on their feet and say, okay, Tori, every morning, 1,000 people, get ready to check those temperatures. You know, it's one of those things where it's just would be very difficult.
Is the school district exempt from the, I guess it's a federal rule that somebody's off because of COVID, that you cannot take their leave from them and you pay them, but you fill out the paperwork, send it in, and the government reimburses you for their salary?
We'll have to look into that. What we were thinking, just aside from any legislation or federal mandates, would be if you get sick, well, if you could use your local and sick leave, then we would swoop in and help you. You know, that you would use your leave first.
I think unless you're exempt from it,
yeah.
If they're off because of COVID, you cannot charge them sick leave, personal time, or anything else, and you have to continue to pay.
Yeah.
You send a form into the state or federal government, and they send you back.
And that would be good.
They reimburse you the salary.
Yeah.
But I don't believe you can unless we're exempt from it.
Yeah.
But I know at work we can't. If you get something, we've had several people quarantined for a period of time, and they draw their check just like they're at work.
And that makes sense. We don't want to penalize anybody for getting it, you know. But yeah, that would be a great deal if they didn't have to use any leave. That'd be fantastic. Different organizations that share our facilities, we just have to have the latitude to be able to say no. It just depends. We can't make broad blanket statements, it just depends. Sometimes a high-risk group might ask us to use something and we just have to say no. Curriculum considerations, we're gonna talk to the teachers about, we've gotten a lot of parent feedback. I think a lot of families are so tired of hearing about COVID, they don't want an assignment on COVID too. The flip side, what the CDC is saying is that from a mental health aspect, you don't want to keep scaring the kids with it either. And so that was the rationale behind their saying, there's no need to keep on that with the curriculum as well. So here's the big last part. If someone catches it, what are you going to do? And so that's where it gets really sticky because we don't know for sure exactly what would happen. Best case scenario would be from a standpoint of, could we isolate that one student to one class to where we could say, okay, this classroom has to stay home and self-isolate? Or is it a situation where, well, we've gotten 5 positive cases and we've got to shut the whole district down for 2 to 3 days? The CDC says there's 2 different types of shutting it down. There's the short term where you go 2 to 5 days and clean and scrub and do all that stuff. And then there's the bigger one where maybe your county is really getting high numbers and you're getting high numbers in the school system and you've got to do a longer term leave where it's 2 to 3 weeks. And so it just depends. It depends on the numbers, it depends on what's going on in the county and the city. And so that's the big what if, as far as when someone gets it. There's been some good news recently though, as far as, in New York City, they were having that link between the Kawasaki disease and COVID with the little young children especially really even dying from it. And now they're starting to see that maybe that's not going to be as problematic as they thought. That was at one time probably the scariest aspect of COVID with relation to children. So they've tried to give us some good news here recently as far as what the outlook is looking like. Of course, it's hard to predict. This is just a very rough draft on June 15th. So again, we've talked about short-term dismissal. We're going to ask the teachers, be ready. At a moment's notice, you might have to flip like you did last spring and start doing some stuff from home, whether it be a paper packet or hopefully virtually something online. It's just hard to know what we would do. We would start the sack lunches again, so it'd be just like the spring if we have an extended leave or even a short-term leave. We'd have to ask the state if we need a waiver for those days that we would miss. And so again, that's something that we'd have to involve a lot of people in as far as, what are the county and city authorities and health authorities saying? What is the state saying to do in these instances, and even what the federal government's saying? And so that is kind of what we have come up with thus far. And again, that's based on what the CDC guidelines have said. One other thing that we decided to do that oftentimes incentivizes sick kids to come are the final exams. Well, I don't want to miss because then I'll have to take my finals. And so what we came together as a group and are proposing is no final exams. That does not need to be a component of the grade. We'll just take our normal grades like normal, and there's no need to have that test where it's getting people to come up here sick. Oftentimes a lot of kids are able to opt out of those anyway. So that in a nutshell is kind of what we have formulated for right now. That might change 10 times between now and August, but so far that's what we have.
So you're recommending that we approve these guidelines that you've come up with?
And with the notion that keep in mind it's fluid, and right now this is kind of just what we're thinking in general. Mm-hmm. And so again, if the public asks you, you at least have some idea. If someone says, now can we bring cake up there on the birthdays, you can say no.
Okay.
Are we going to have field trips?
Senior get to school and that's it.
Yeah. Are you going to have field trips and assemblies? No.
First day of school, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Parents walking the kids in.
Yes, what are you going to do about that?
I think we're not going to turn people away. We're going to beg them that after the first, second day, let's get in the routine here, because we can't have you, again, that defeats the point.
Because with no meet the teacher, I mean, I have a first grader,
Right.
So that's why I'm asking, because they're still small enough that you kind of want to walk them in.
Yeah.
But
So again, we're avoiding those types of zero sum, win lose, no mask, yes mask, no enter, no, we're trying to avoid all that. We're gonna work with people, we're gonna ask them to work with us, and hopefully, we come up with a good situation. And, I'm hopeful that most people, they understand the predicament we're into.
Right, that sounds good.
So we need to vote on this.
Yes, my recommendation would be to approve it as it is right now, with the understanding that it's very fluid.
Okay, is there a motion for that?
You had a question?
I'm sorry, Linda?
I have a question. Okay, after we vote on this, if it votes positive or
Yeah.
whatever, what is your plan for releasing this to the public?
I don't know that I'm gonna have a full scale, here it is, this is it. Because it may, like I said, it may change 10 times over. But what I need y'all to do is at least wrap your mind around, okay, what is it right now? I don't know necessarily that it has to be an action item, but it would be good if you at least gave me feedback on, do you feel good about this? When somebody corners you at Walmart, can you defend it? Do you feel uncomfortable with parts of it?
Support.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, is there a motion? Linda, second. Cheyenne, any other questions? All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, everybody. Thank you, Barrett.
And it's out of date right now, basically. Really, truly. Because we have phone calls with the commissioner, we have press conferences that come on TV from the governor. I mean, this is already out of date as soon as we've approved it. So.
But it's fluid.
But it at least gives people an idea, okay, we're gonna stay on the normal calendar? Yeah.
Okay, so you want to talk about the missed school day waiver? Dan?
Yes, that next one is real easy. It's just back during when the pandemic started, we needed to make sure that they give you a little bit of time to get your waiver in, and so there was no rush to do it, but now they're wanting districts to get it in. But basically in the waiver, we're attesting that we taught the students, we supported them from an instructional standpoint, and although they physically weren't here, we were sending home packets, we were doing stuff online, and so basically we need to get that into Region 12, and then they'll take it to TEA. But my recommendation is that the board approve the missed school day waiver due to the COVID pandemic, and of course that was from March 16th to May 22nd, and allow the board president and superintendent to sign that form.
Okay, is there a motion for that recommendation?
I'll make it.
Charlie? And a second, Rob? Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, motion carries.
Okay.
Thank you, Barrett.
Thank y'all.
So, bids for school surplus items, Scott?
Just to go back to the CDC guidelines, it's now part of our EOP, Emergency Operating Procedures, and so this week we have to submit what are we doing differently, how are we going to open up our schools, so you guys approving it. They understand that the plan will change, but they want to make sure we have a plan.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so that's what they're looking at. Are you submitting a plan even though it may change? Yes, we have a plan, we have a good plan, and so we'll go forward with it. So thanks for approving that part. The bids for school surplus items, you have the information in front of you. 2 months ago, we put items up for bid, and then we had them come in, and these are the ones that are awarded the highest bidder. And so my recommendation is to award these bids and remove those corresponding items from the inventory, and then sell the remaining items on a first come with cash, first to buy basis.
Is there a motion for that recommendation? Cheyenne, second. Rob, any questions? All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed, any abstention?
I can't vote on it.
He's one of the.
Can you
Oh.
abstain or just?
I'm abstaining because I bid on one item.
Yeah, right, I saw that, but,
Yeah.
so you are, Marcy, so he'd be abstaining, of course?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, motion carries, thank you. Scott?
The next item is the School Community Guidance Center. 3 years ago, we initiated the steps to create a guidance center. We had 21 students that were repeat placements in DAP. So we were trying to cut down on that recidivism to stop those repeat customers coming back. And so we had 5 steps that we had to go through. We had to enlist an attorney, which that's the county attorney, Brendan Belt. We request petitions from him to take them to court. We had to elect a level of court, so we met with the juvenile board, and so the county court at law under Judge Lee is the court that we will take our petitions to. We enacted an MOU, which is what is presented for you today, and every 2 years we decided to review it to make sure that we're staying current and see what changes we might need to bring. Then we employed some social workers, and the reason why social workers are important in this case for this type of at-risk RTI is they're able to go out and get outside community help and help our students. And so this community guidance center allows them to build a plan that is just not school-based, it's also community-based to help out the student and the family to overcome the barriers that they have. And then last, we had to energize our partners. We have a good relationship with the JPO, the Juvenile Probation Office. Our community mentors are part of this. Outside counseling agencies like Freedom Reign and Starry are there, and the Central County Services are all part of pieces of this plan that a student might get. And so 2 years ago we piloted with DAP because this is a new type program, and that first year we had 17 repeat placements in DAP. This year we had 6. Now everything in 2019, 2020 has an asterisk by it. We stopped school in March, and so it's not, hey, look, this is going to be the sure pattern from here on out. But it does show that we are reducing the number of repeat placements in DAP. The School Community Guidance Center MOU that you have in front of you, we want to expand that scope, talking with Brendan Belt on how we can incorporate other ways of helping students. And one way, we're going to continue with DAP. We believe it's working. We have our social workers that are working tirelessly to help our students. We have 4 seniors in DAP this year, and all 4 graduated. And during the COVID, the shutdown, they could have easily said, which they did say, I don't have to, I don't need to. School's over, I can just walk out of here. And but they kept them going, kept them working, and they graduated. So it's a compliment to our social workers to keep it going. So we want to keep this part of DAP. We're adding to it the substance abuse policy, which whenever a student comes up positive on a drug test, because they're participating in extracurricular or co-curricular, we're allowed to drug test them. If they come up positive, we want to put them under a School Community Guidance Center so that even if they quit that area, because I've had students quit, they came up positive and they say, well, I quit UIL. We can no longer test them because they're not part of that group. Well, now as soon as they come up on a positive, they become part of the School Community Guidance Center. So they've agreed to be a part of that extracurricular, co-curricular. So they agreed to be a part of the program, the situation. So whenever they come up positive, or if they come up positive, they automatically will go under a School Community Guidance Center. So if they do quit, we can still continue to drug test them because it's part of their School Community Guidance Center plan. And so that's a way of removing that loophole of students just saying, I quit, I'm out, you can no longer drug test me. I'd rather do that than participate in whatever UIL is going on. So we think that's going to be a positive force to have that extra legal leverage with some of those, that even if you quit, you still have to follow these things, get counseling, get help, and understand the decisions you're making and what they could lead to in the future. And the last scope, the last expansion is getting truant students. This one's a little more trickier because anything that we present to the county court at law has to be enforceable. So you have to have specific days and times and people involved so that they can enforce whatever it is that they're not participating in. And the statute says we have to go through our truancy court, which is now Justice of the Peace Precinct 4. So we can't bypass what's already in statute, but we're adding an extra layer. So right now, whenever they're truant on a campus, the campus has to initiate truancy interventions. They have to document it. It has to be specific on who, what, when, and where, and how we're going to overcome these barriers to school. If they continue with the truant behavior, then we're going to file with the JP court. So we've met all the statute with truancy at that point. The practice in JP court is to give them 30 days continuance. You go to court, you have 30 days to improve, or else you have these fines given to you. Because JP court can only do civil, it's a civil case, and they can only attach things to the parent and not the student. We can't follow on the student anymore. And so their hands are very limited on what they can do. So during that 30-day continuance, we'll put them under the School Community Guidance Center. So for 30 days, we'll continue to work with them on trying to get them to improve their attendance. And if they don't, then we can petition to go to the county court at law. And then Judge Lee has a lot more resources to tag in and can also make things applicable to the student and the family. And so now we're going to be able to add a little bit more legal teeth to it. The flip side of that is that we're under the same scrutiny as the parent and the kid. We have to make sure that we've exhausted all our avenues before we take them to court, because this is a legal entanglement. The reason why they restricted the JP court and the truancy court and not making it a criminal case and reducing down what resources they have available is they're trying to eliminate getting families and kids entangled in the law at such an early age. And so this is getting them entangled with the law, but it's something that we need to do to be able to get kids back in school, be able to make an important inference on the kid. This is your responsibility, and the parent, it's your responsibility. A lot of times going to the truancy court, the kids are like, you know, you can't make me, I'm not going. And the parents are like, you know, having a hard time handling them. Well, their parents are the ones that pay the fine. Nothing happens to the kid because we can't mandate that through the JP court. So we're hoping that that's going to work through this court of law.
How many times have we taken people to court? Any?
Yes, this past year was 6.
6?
Mm-hmm. Now we had, when we had the truancy cases, a lot of them going forward, these are the extreme, most egregious ones going forward. The campus still has the responsibility to work with them on interventions. A kid's truant for a while, then comes back and then goes. It's a big yo-yo effect.
What grade level was it, were the 6?
Say again?
What campus level was the 6?
High school. Now working on the attendance part, we last year we did our VIP with all the chronically absent students. At the end of the year, if you had 17 or more unexcused absences, you had to come to a meeting at the auditorium and meet the JP and the county attorney. And so we talked about attendance and getting all that, improving. You had to come in. We withheld their schedules until they signed off and said that they had either talked to me or the county attorney, and then they could get their schedule. So we had 99 at the end of last year. At the end of this year, again with an asterisk, we have 52. And so I went back and looked at that 99. We had some withdrawal, some how many more are on this list that were on that list, and it was 20. So 20 last year are on this 52 this year. And a lot of the barriers that they have are, familial barriers, that economic barriers, things that, education is just not on the top of their list. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of things that we're trying to work with through the School Community Guidance Center to bring in other community resources to help out the family, which will, in the end, help out the student and help them get to school. But at the beginning of school, we'll have another VIP session. We'll send out mailers to the 52, have them come in, go through the same thing that we did. And this is concentrated at the high school about holding the schedule. At the other grade levels, we kind of hold back who your teacher is, meet the teacher. How that plays out with our new program of opening school, we have to work all those logistic things out. And so if there's any, I work with this a lot, so I know a lot of the procedures and stuff, and it may seem kind of foreign. If you have any questions about procedures, how it works, I'm happy to talk about those at any time.
Have you seen any good results?
The leverage, whenever a student gets placed in DAP, we have an intake conference. So we have people from the campuses come in, the social worker attends, and they know at that intake that they're going to have an individualized plan, and if they don't participate in it, then we can file with the court, and they can get a contempt of court charge, which will fall back on them. And so that leverage, I believe, has helped us. Because before that, it was like, good luck, I can't control them, so I don't know how you're going to make them do this, that, or the other. Well, now we have something to back it. We've only filed for one petition, and that was this past year. And there's some things that I can't talk about in open session about why, because this is an individualized plan. But I can, we can talk about in executive session how this works. But we filed for one, and the courthouse is closed. So we're waiting for that to open back up. We'll get that student in, and this student needs assistance that we don't have available. And so we're hoping that the court will weigh in and say, this is what needs to happen with this student. So the recommendation is to to approve the MOU with the Coryell County and the Coryell County Juvenile Board, and it's for the next 2 years.
Is there a motion for
I'll
that?
make it.
David, second. Rob? Any questions? Okay, all in favor, raise your hand. Thank you, motion carries. Thank you, Mr.
Stay
Harper.
after it.
We will.
And Pam with the Temple Regional Day School Program, non-member contract.
This item is looking at the Regional Day School Program for the deaf. And this year and in prior years, we've been affiliated with Waco ISD and using their program, their school, if we have a student that's needed this type of service. And they charge, their tuition is $50,000 per student. And we found out in November of this year that they were increasing that amount. So I decided to start looking to see if there were other options available to us and if there was anything closer. Temple has a regional day school facility and their tuition is $7,500 per student. And so they're closer, transportation would be less. So overall, it would be in GISD's best interest to look at moving. So that's my recommendation, that we approve the non-member contract with Temple ISD for their regional day school program for the deaf.
Is there a motion for that recommendation? Cheyenne, second? Linda, did you raise your hand? Okay. Are there any questions?
What, in the past years, what did it cost per student?
We've always budgeted $50,000.
For how many students?
Per student,
Each?
each.
Holy mackerel.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not a service that we use very often, but the potential's always there. So yeah, we were trying to find something.
So
Was that the only available place at that time when we would use that?
Honestly,
You
I'm not
found out.
sure why it was chosen to begin with. Temple's a day school is relatively new, so they just started the facility. So it's just been in the last few years. But Waco is one of the most expensive in the state.
do we have any idea? Okay, 50,000 is a lot of money and 7,500 is awfully cheap compared to 50,000. Cheap ain't always good. So what do we know about cheap? The results.
Their curriculum, so if you look at the day schools, Waco ISD teaches standard ASL sign language. Temple uses what's called C's, which is, it's sign language, but it's in a different form, which actually is better for our younger students when they're learning, because ASL changes the word order of sentence structure. So when you translate that into learning, like in the classroom and reading sentences or just basic reading, it's kind of confusing, especially when they can't hear the conversations going around. So when you send them to a facility like this to learn the sign language, this program, when they transition back to your campus, actually lends to them doing better in the classroom. It's an easier transition back for them. So there are definite benefits to the program that they're doing in Temple as opposed to Waco ISD.
Have we had a student in any of these programs?
It's been a few years. We currently have a student that could potentially be going.
So they go to one of these programs and learn sign language, and they come back to our school system.
Yes.
Who do we have to have a sign language, I don't know, you call them interpreter or what, in there with them? How does that work?
We do. We will put a one-on-one person in the classroom with them. We currently have a situation for this where a student has a one-on-one. That person does know sign language. She helps with communication in the classroom for that student, and learning is, she's making progress. So right now, the facility isn't needed. It comes into play usually as they get older and the curriculum starts to get a little more difficult. that's when you'll see that they'll need more access. They also have assistive technology in the classroom where the teacher can interact with a student in this way with an iPad. So an iPad is carried if they're in a place where there is not an interpreter and they need to communicate, they can use the iPad and it will communicate with the teacher. They have access to put that in. So we have those in place. Those are readily available for anybody in the district who needs it. And it's a pretty rare occasion that we would have to send a student to this type of school, but we always have to budget for it.
So we have a few students using the iPad.
We do. We have quite a few students with the assistive technology that use that iPad for communication.
Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand. None opposed, okay. Thank you, motion carries. And Mr. Webb will be up here for a while, so
wow.
just the
Maybe
floor,
not too quick.
the floor is yours.
I'll go quick. These are just, these next few items, one of them new, but some of the others are just something that we do each summer, just kind of getting our agreements in place with some of our programs that we send our kids to. And the first one is Central Texas College. You know, CTC is our partnership that we use for a lot of our dual credit courses. And so this right here is just to continue that partnership through next year. Does anybody have any questions about our dual credit partnership with CTC before I make the recommendation? Yes, ma'am.
Linda?
I'm just curious, how many students usually participate in this?
I have that number. It's probably usually around 60 to 80. I can tell you how much money we send to CTC every year. 2 years ago it was around $80,000 to $85,000, and this last year it was about $65,000. We didn't have as many enrolled in CTC, but it's typically around 60 to 80 kids. So I recommend that the Gatesville ISD Board of Trustees approve the dual credit program agreement with CTC so that Gatesville High School students may continue to take advantage of these courses.
Okay, I'll make the motion. Who wants to second? Charlie?
Sure.
Okay. Although, any
this-
questions?
Discussion?
Yeah, any questions?
Is this an extension of the same agreement that we have in place now, or is it different?
It's the extension of the same. We renew it
Change the
every
dates.
year. We
Yeah.
just renew it every year.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all those in favor? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Webb.
All right. The next one is with Coriel Memorial EMS program. So you know, last year we started the EMT certification program in partnership with Coriel Memorial EMS, and so we're wanting to continue that partnership. Last year they donated the ambulance to us, and we had those classes. I think we had 8 students enrolled through the class, and we've had 4 or 5 that have received their EMT certification or signed up to take their test. The testing was difficult with all the closures and not being able to get into a testing center. And I think 1 or 2 of them weren't 18 yet, so they have to wait till in the summer till they turn 18 till they can actually take the test. You know, we were holding the classes here at Gatesville High School with all the construction. We're busing them to the hospital. With the hospital's construction complete now, they have some classrooms there that they can use. And so this is just to continue on the program that we have for our EMT certification. And actually we met with Jeff Mincy last week, who oversees the program. He actually has 2 kids that they're wanting to hire, and one I think is pretty close to being hired with them. So it's just become another way for them to get some experience and some employees. It's been good.
Have there been any students who are unable to pay the rest of the tuition?
We have not had any problems with that,
Okay,
but we will, I mean, just like we do with the, you know, with our dual credit, if we
Mhm.
have kids that are in need, we're never gonna not have a kid take it because they can't.
okay, cause I saw that we pay 100 towards it a
Yeah,
semester.
we're doing it the same way that we do with the dual credit classes. We pay 100 a semester for all of our dual credit classes, so we just decided to follow the same path that we do for our dual credit. Cause this is kind of even though this isn't dual credit, but it's a certification program that's
Yes.
gonna lead to a job for them.
But if one needs help, we'll be there.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am. We don't want it to be a,
go ahead, Ron.
So I was gonna make the motion.
You'll make, okay. Ron's
Sorry.
gonna make a motion.
He's ready
Thank
to
you,
go.
you're on it.
it's been really good.
Like that
I mean, it's been really, really good.
David
That's a good
seconded.
deal.
Are any questions, anybody? Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand. Great, none opposed. Thank you.
Thank
That's a
you.
good deal.
The next one is the MOU with Temple College. So, you know, we have a few students that go to Temple College, to the Texas Bioscience Institute through Temple College each year. That is an application process, and they have to be selected by Temple College to be able to enroll into that program. And, you know, this MOU kind of outlines the student eligibility requirements, you know, different other things. You know, we do have to pay a consortium fee of $150. And I believe we have 3 students that will be attending Temple College Bioscience Institute this next year. Does anybody have any questions about this before? And this is just re-upping this agreement as well,
Changing the date.
just changing the date.
Is there a motion? David, second. Linda? Any other questions? Okay, all of those in favor, raise your hand. None opposed. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, this next one is new, so I'm gonna explain this the best I can. But this is through the University of Texas at Austin, and it's called an on-ramps program. Sorry, it's funded by TEA, and so what it is, it's a dual enrollment program where a kid can enroll into a high school course but be dually enrolled into a college course. And so our thoughts are is we're going to start small. We're going to start with one course. We're going to look at chemistry, so high school chemistry. Teacher has to go to a training for about, I can't remember if it's 8 to 10 days in the summer, and then 2 or 3 days throughout the year. And they'll be the teacher of record for the high school part of it, but then she'll also be working hand in hand with a college professor from the University of Texas. So a kid will enroll into this class, and they'll take the class, and it's going to be Lisa Truss will be our first one, and there may be, let's say there's 30 grades for the semester for this chemistry class. The teacher will use the high school's grading policy to give the students the grades, and so they'll follow our grading policy. Now the professor will come say, this grade, this grade, this grade, and this grade counts for your college grade. And so then that grade is now given by the professor. At the end of the course, the kid has the option to say, yes, I want this to count as a college credit, or no, I don't. But they are going to get high school credit for sure. But they get to choose at the end whether they're going to accept it for college credit or not. So it's a different program. This is the TEA helps supplement the cost of this. So you know, it's about $149 a kid, and if you're free and reduced lunch or anything like that, then it drops down to $99 a kid. And so the cost is much less, but it's just like it'd just be like taking a college course from CTC, but you're getting high school credit, and then you get to choose, do you want to take the college credit or not.
So if it didn't work out in the kid's favor, they wouldn't have to have it on their
Correct.
transcript.
The goal is low barrier, like to not get it. If a kid wants to try a college course then they don't want it to be a barrier that if they don't do well, I don't have to take the grade for the college grade and hurt my GPA.
Okay.
And they want it to be a low cost. So, you know, if it's geared toward a lot of times, you know, it may be a first generation college student or somebody that thinks that maybe, I don't know that I can try a college course. So it'll maybe give them some confidence that yes, they can take a college course, because where on-ramps comes from is you try a college course, the chances are you're gonna go back and you're gonna go get a college degree and you're gonna keep going through your education.
And that's it from UT in Austin?
This is from UT in Austin, yes ma'am.
So would that help the kid get into UT more?
I don't know that it would help them get into more. It would just be a college credit that they
From
would be able to
UT.
transfer to any other college.
Okay.
And so it is 1,000. It's $12.50 a teacher for the year. But like I said, they go through training. They have to go. I think it's 2 weeks of training, and then they go to training a couple days in the fall, a couple days in the spring. And every year they have to go back for 3 more days of training. And so it's just an ongoing professional development for the course.
And who pays for the kid?
Who pays for the kid? Well, we haven't looked at that, but we would probably run it the same way we have with any other dual credit course. We would pay the $100, and then so it might only be $49 a kid that wanted to try that.
But we're gonna pay $12.50 for the teacher,
The teacher has to get trained.
and we're gonna pay that.
Yes, sir. The teacher has to go through
So
professional
one teacher can
development.
teach several students, and you're not gonna have to have several
Yeah,
teachers.
it'll be one teacher. She'll teach probably this first year, probably be one course, so she could have a class of 20, 25, or she may, if we have 50 kids that want to sign up for it, then she may have 2 or 3 classes of it. But it's still the $12.50 just for that one teacher. You know, we want to start with small with chemistry and maybe consider expanding it into other subject areas in the future.
See how it works.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
does anybody have any other questions about it? Yes, ma'am.
I just have one on the teacher end. Does that training count as their PD?
Yes, ma'am.
For,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, for the school? Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, the following year, can she teach it again without the $12.50 training?
She had.
Just go back and get 35
I think
hours.
the price reduces to like $8.50 after that after the first year, but the
Has to train
the
more.
training is mandatory. It's a part of being of the on-ramps program through UT.
A&M didn't offer it.
80 hours of
Well,
training the
I have
first year and 35.
Yeah, I have a feeling this is legislative pushed.
Oh, there you
You
go.
know, and so, so TEA supplements the cost of a lot of this. That's why they're able to offer it at $150 a kid, as opposed to
Cheap.
4 or 5, whatever a normal course for UT would cost.
Yeah.
I wish it was another college.
Yeah.
So you want to read your recommendations?
Yes, ma'am. So I recommend the Gatesville ISD Board of Trustees approve the cooperative program agreement with the University of Texas at Austin, so that Gatesville High School students may take advantage of college coursework offered through the on-ramps program.
Is there a motion for that recommendation? Rob, second Linda?
Yeah.
Any other questions?
It's gonna hurt.
Huh?
I'm sorry, was the second Linda?
Yes. All those in favor, raise your hand. None. It hurts, but it's
What did we
raised.
miss out on?
So, motion carries, thank you. Great.
Thank you, guys.
It's only for the kid.
Yes, it's.
Only reason I did it.
That's right, it's for the kids. All right, and the last one here is our minimum grade requirements for student athletes in advanced courses. And again, this is something that we look at every year. And, prior to last year, if a student failed any of these courses, in any of these advanced courses, then they were still able to play. And then last year, we had come to you guys and we wanted to look at setting a minimum grade requirement of a 60. And so, they typically get extra GPA points for trying a harder course, for being enrolled in a harder course. And so we don't want to discourage kids from trying and taking these courses. You know, a lot of them are dual credit and pre-AP and AP courses. And so, you know, we want to keep that minimum grade as 60. That way a kid just can't just go bomb it, I'm not going to do anything. And so they still have to have a requirement in order to still want to be able to play sports or be involved in any kind of UIL activities, extracurriculars. Does anybody have any questions about?
What did we come up with the number 60 again? Go over that one more time. You get a 10 point plus for being
They're on it's on a 5 points. Most of them are on a 4.5 or a 5.0 scale. So making a 60 in a advanced class is like making a 70 on the GPA scale.
Okay, so you get a 10 point bump because it's an advanced class.
Yes.
But all the other classes still have to be 70 to pass.
Correct. Yes, sir. It's just on these advanced classes that we have outlined on this sheet. So.
That's what it was back before we had air conditioning.
Yes, sir. Any other questions? All right. Well, I recommend that the Board of Trustees approve the proposal that student athletes maintain a minimum of a 60 average in all advanced courses to be considered passing with regard to the UIL no pass, no play rule.
And I remember last year I made a mistake on that. It's not just athletes. It's everybody.
It's everybody. It's all extracurriculars. Yeah. Anything that we use that you have to have passing grades to be able to be a part of, you know, in school.
Now that 60 is the actual grade. That's not counting the 10 point.
That's the actual grade. Yes, sir. So if you're sitting in AP US History and you make a 61, then you're okay. But if you make a 59, then you're not eligible.
Is there a motion for that recommendation? Cheyenne, and second. Linda, any other questions?
What does that do for their grade if they wind up with, say, even a 65 or even a 60 for the semester? Do they pass the class?
They get the GPA
Local?
bump. They get the GPA bump. A 65 on a 5.0 scale is, let's see, a 70 is a 2.0.
Yeah.
So it'd be a 65 on a 5.0 would be what, a 2.5?
Well, my question is, does he pass the class given credit for the semester or year?
I believe they do.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
That's available for all the students, isn't it? Anybody that takes that particular class,
Right.
Yeah.
you get a 10 point. So we're really,
Yeah, and this is very rare. Like, you know, you may have a kid who may fail, who may make a 63 9 weeks, but it's not gonna happen again. I mean, it's
Kind of my thought is, these are your upper level kids taking these classes supposedly to start with, and if they're making 60 or anything below a 70, they probably don't belong in there.
You're right.
But you said this is rare.
Right.
You just have to have
It's
it
usually
right.
it's usually a moot
It's
point.
very, very rare. I mean, you know, when I was principal, it was, I mean, I can, less than one hand, you know, where.
Just have to have it in writing.
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed?
You know, it's also there to
Motion carries.
not discourage a kid from trying to take a test, you know, to take a course.
Thank you, Mr. Webb.
Thank you, guys. I
You don't
appreciate
want
it.
any money?
No money today.
Oh, my goodness.
And you kind of missed it, it's $100 there and $100 there per student.
Yeah.
Those are all things.
Next month.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go into executive session in 5-10 minutes. What do y'all want?